Welcome to episode 3 of the Gaming Saloon. I'm your host, Scottish Bandit, coming back after 7 long years. And I've came back for one game, and that is Hollow Knight Silksong. Originally announced back in 2019 and was going to be DLC for the original Hollow Knight. However, they turned it into its own game. So it's been a long time coming for me to come back to the platform and for Hollow Knight Silksong to be finally released. This is going to be an impressions video of the first 10 hours of Hollow Knight Silksong. Before we get started, I just want to go over some housekeeping. I'm going to try and keep this video as spoiler free as possible. There's only going to be one boss shown, and it's an early boss in the game, and there's not going to be any NPCs, and I'm not going to go into any story details. Now, to give you some backstory to my history with the original Hollow Knight, I beat the game and got the vanilla ending. I put in about 55 hours and got most of the side content in the game. Loved it. Great game. One of the greats. So I was very eager for Hollow Knight Silksong. And one last thing before we actually get into the impressions themselves, I do want to talk about the long 6-year wait from the announcement back in 2019 of this game. Because this game has been very anticipated. It had a massive hype train and a lot of fans eager to get hands on it. And I actually think, before I even played the game, I thought, some people might potentially get disappointed just with the long wait, hype train, everyone getting excited. It had a feeling of people might be anticipating something that's going to revolutionize gaming. And before I even touched the game, I thought to myself, I think this is going to be more Hollow Knight. Which is a great thing, because Hollow Knight's a fantastic game with more elements. So it'll be interesting to see people's thoughts after a few months when the dust has settled down, to see what people's reactions to this game have been. So let's start off with the impressions themselves. I'm going to start off with the presentation of the game. So it's got the same fantastic hand-drawn art style of the original game, which still holds up. So it looks phenomenal. Now the areas themselves, I will say, within the first 10 hours, have been a bit underwhelming. Now, as a new player to the Hollow Knight genre, so someone that's coming in from Silksong, haven't played the original Hollow Knight, this won't be an issue. But as a player that's completed and played the original Hollow Knight, a bit underwhelmed. The reason why is because a lot of the areas, especially the early areas in the game, are very similar to the ones in Hollow Knight. I wanted to come into this, there would be some, areas that look quite similar, but I wanted to see some new areas by Team Cherry in this fantastic art style. And I'm not seeing tons of that so far within the first 10 hours. There is a lava magna area, which looks really nice. But there's the first two areas in the game are basically the first two areas in Hollow Knight, the original. You've got a ruined, decayed area, which is very reminiscent. And then you've got another moss green foresty area, just like Green Path. So yeah, kind of underwhelmed by that. Hopefully as we go on we see new areas that are new to the Hollow Knight franchise as we go on. And I also want to give a shout out to the animations. Top tier animations here. I'm very impressed in the hand-drawn art style, like I said before. One that especially stood out to me, and you'll see this in the footage, is when Hornet is moving from left to right or vice versa. She kind of does this shuffle, and it just looks great. So shout out to the animations of the game. Now, going on to the sound in the game, this is my biggest gripe so far. So the music in the original Hollow Knight, top tier music, still listen to it this day, fantastic. So I had a high expectations going into this game, and I have been quite disappointed so far within the first 10 hours. I'll give you my reasons why. Twofold. One being when I'm in areas, I don't even notice the music. Kind of vanilla, kind of not even there. Standard stuff. And to say that about a Hollow Knight game is very disappointing. Now, there are 3 soundtracks, the top 3 soundtracks so far, that do stand out and are good, but they have issues. Here's the issue. The 3 music in the game that do stand out, they're remixes of 3 songs, in my opinion, the top 3 songs of the original Hollow Knight. And they're worse remixes. So they're not even new music, and they're worse than the original counterparts. So that just disappoints me, to be honest. Maybe it doesn't disappoint other people as much. It does disappoint me. I want to see some new top tier music from Team Jerry, which I know they're capable of. And yeah, I've been underwhelmed and just getting remixes. So I'm really, really hoping that we hear some really banger new soundtrack when I play more in this game. Now let's talk about the story. Now I'm not going to go, like I said, into any story specific details, but I do want to touch on a major difference to the original Hollow Knight, and it's the way the story is told. So in the original Hollow Knight, it was kind of a Dark Souls Bloodborne affair. You're kind of going through the story, not being told much, getting bits and bobs from NPCs, looking at item descriptions and trying to basically be a detective and piece it together yourself, which was great. Now, when I beat the final boss of the original Hollow Knight, I'll be honest with you, I picked up some lore details along the way about these cities and things like that, which was really nice. But I had no idea what the final boss was and the ending. I had no idea what the main story was about, to be honest with you, until I beat the game and what I like to call go on YouTube and look up one of the lore masters to get a rundown of the lore, which in itself is incredible. But again, didn't have a clue what was going on during the time. Now, I enjoy that sort of thing because I'm a big From Software and Souls fan. Some people, and I know obviously the community like that as well, piecing it all together, obviously it's not going to be for everyone. Silksong completely does away with that. From my first 10 hours impressions, it's very much told in a typical game linear fashion. And what I mean by that is, when you're going through the game, they're just telling you the story. There's no investigating really in the actual main story itself. The big reason for that is Hornet talks. So in the original Hollow Knight, you played as the knight, didn't talk, didn't know his motivations, didn't know what his goals were. Now, that's a whole can of worms in itself, because the knight has, let's just put it, very interesting lore and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into it here for spoiler reasons. But yeah, Hornet talks to NPCs. We know Hornet's motivation. We know what Hornet's goals are. And that's obviously what you're trying to strive to in the game. So it's a very much different type of storytelling approach. I like both ways. If I had to pick one, I'd probably pick the original Hollow Knight, the Dark Souls formula of being an investigator and piecing it all together. But I'm really enjoying this story so far. I think it's really nice. Love playing as Hornet. She was my favourite character in the original Hollow Knight. So actually seeing her, play as her, seeing her talk, and going through her story, some great lore. I'm really enjoying it. But it'll be interesting to see how the community reacts to that. Big change, because I know they all like to go on forums and discuss theories about the lore and the story and things like that. There will be some of that here, but so far, 10 hours in going from the main story, a lot of it's told to the player, so that's a major difference. So let's get to the meat and potatoes of this game, the gameplay. Gameplay's fantastic. Fantastic. I'm having a blast playing this game. It plays, this is playing a lot like the original Hollow Knight, but with some new added gameplay elements, which is what I thought going in. Playing as Hornet, love it. Love it. She is a lot more agile than the Knight of the original game. She has some really cool moves. I'll go over some of them. So the knight had a dash in the original game. Hornet gets a dash, but she can also actually just full on run in the game. Now, I haven't seen a double jump from her, which the knight had, but I think what the equivalent of that is when she runs, and I'll show some gameplay of this. When she runs, she can at the end of a run jump, and it kind of acts as like a equivalent to what a double jump would be. The cool thing is she can do that, so she can run, jump onto a platform that you couldn't get on before, but then she can, when she lands on that platform, she can continuously run and keep doing that. So you can chain together, run jumps basically from platform to platform. Really fun. Hornet can throw knives, which is nice. She's got a skill where she throws out a spear as well. That's kind of like a similar skill to, I think it's one of the first skills you get in the original Hollow Knight, where you throw out like that soul move. So that's kind of similar. She also has a move in which she, and they don't tell you this in the game, but obviously you'll find out by just playing, is when you jump and you're in midair and you attack down, she does this kind of diagonal downward attack. It's not a honing attack, but it'll basically go diagonal to a certain limit in the place where you're facing. And it's really fun. You can actually chain it. So you can dodge down onto an enemy, hit him with your needle, and then Hornet will bounce back up in the air and you can do it again. Again, it's not honing, so there is some skill involved there to chain it together, but very satisfying when you get it. Now, the exploring in the game, the level design, fantastic level design. I know some people had issues with the original Hollow Knight where you go into an area, you don't get the map until you find the NPC that gives you it. I have no issues with that. It's good because you're going to pretty much come back when you get skills, like a Metroidvania, come back when you've got some skills that you can get to areas which you couldn't before. But I just love the level design, love exploring, finding secrets, trying to get tools, which is they've renamed charms from the original game. I'm hitting walls to try and find invisible walls to hit through so I can get more tools. So there's a lot of secrets. It's very engrossing. The exploration in this game is fantastic. This game is tough. Now, the original Hollow Knight was tough in its own right, and it was a challenge for players, especially the bosses. I think this game, within the first 10 hours, is actually harder than Hollow Knight 1. In the original Hollow Knight, the early bosses in the game, I died maybe 4 or 5 times to some of them. Some of them I got first time, but most bosses, you'll get the odd easy boss, usually early on, that you might get first time, but a lot of them you don't, and that's what I like to call good gameplay design for boss battles. You shouldn't be beating boss battles first time. You should go in there, unless you get very lucky, you shouldn't know the patterns to beat the boss. So you obviously die, keep coming back, learn the boss, and basically beat the boss in the end, and you feel like a god. This game does that. But there's been bosses, specifically 3 bosses, where I've actually died over 10 times on them. And when I fought them the first time, I thought to myself, am I under leveled here? Do I need to come back? And it just came down to, you go out there, you get smashed, really smashed, and then you obviously keep coming back and learning the patterns, and then obviously when you overcome them, like I said, you feel like a god in the end. So this game's really doing great boss battles. Some have story elements which are really nice, I'm not going to go into, but really cool story elements. And just the gameplay mechanics and the boss fights are just fantastic. Now, there has been some interesting chatter. I've been staying away from the internet, the interweb, about the discussion in this game. It's obviously the talk of the town right now. I've tried to keep myself away from that to not interrupt my interpretation of the game, my feelings on the game, and not get spoilers. Have came across some things just through podcasts and the like. I've heard that they are either have patched the game or looking to patch the game to nerf some of the bosses. Some of the bosses are too hard apparently for some players, or they found that, and are nerfing some of the bosses. It would be interesting to see once I beat the game and look into that in more detail, which bosses. I don't know if it's bosses that I've already fought, the ones that I've just mentioned. Is it later bosses in the game? I don't know. It'd be interesting to see. Those bosses that I was talking about, it is interesting having them so early in the game, because like I said, they are tougher than the original Hollow Knight bosses, early bosses, and yeah, some people might get smashed and then say call it a day. So it'll be interesting to see what bosses got nerfed. It's an interesting call, and I know I have heard some rumblings that it's a little bit dividing the community. Should games be easier? Should games be harder? Obviously, we're not getting a difficulty added here. We're just getting a bosses straight up nerfed. So yeah, it'll be interesting to dig into more of that detail once I finish the game. Now, the last thing I'm going to go over in the gameplay section, I'm not going to go over everything, of course, is the tool system. Now, they're what's called charms in the original game. They've just renamed them. A big change to that, actually. So in the original game, you had charm slots, so you could upgrade them and get more slots. So, for example, at one point you might have 5 slots, charm slots. And say a charm, you get one charm that costs 2 charm slots and another charm that costs 3. Well, that's 5 in total charm slots, and you can equip both of those charms. Obviously, you can't equip any other charm you've got. So you could basically equip what you want within reason, depending to the charm cost, to make different builds, some OP builds potentially. In this game, they have changed it quite dramatically. So they have different colored slots. For example, gold slot, where you can equip what I like to call miscellaneous charms, tools. Currency gets automatically drawn to you. You don't take as much knockback of attacks, things like that. Passive miscellaneous tools. You get a blue slot for defensive charms and a red slot for offensive charms. So obviously it's a lot different than the original game. You can't just go, I'm going to put in tons of offensive charms or defensive charms and vice versa. So yeah, again, another interesting one to see how the community reacts to that. I think their rationale behind that is probably 2 reasons. One, to prevent overpowering meta builds, and the second being they might have found that in the statistics some charms just weren't getting used because there's other meta builds that just don't include them and wouldn't need them. So potentially they did it to make sure, allow some defensive miscellaneous charms or the like to actually get some game time instead of just not being used. So my final thoughts on the first 10 hours of Hollow Knight Silksong. Fantastic. Having a fantastic time. This is a great game so far. Hopefully it continues. Just having a blast, exploring, finding secrets, and those boss battles and gameplay's phenomenal. However, I do hope that the areas get more varied, some new areas that we've not seen in the Hollow Knight universe, and I hope, specifically my biggest gripe in the game is that the OST gets a lot better with some original score. So, are you playing Hollow Knight Silksong? What's your thoughts? And also, what's your thoughts on them nerfing some of the bosses? Do you feel that's a good decision, or do you not? Let me know in the comments section below. I've been Scottish Bandon. Until next time,